What's up, positive folks? I hope you're vibing today because we have today a special guest for our third episode of the Positive Podcast series. We have Amy White, who is a very unique individual, and she is going to share her experiences and story with us today. We hope you look forward to it and get excited. So, my name is Zane. I'm the founder of Positive Vibes Magazine. We're very new. We've existed for around 2 months. We recently did an interview with two directors of a Netflix film, which was that was exciting.
Cool.
And then we interviewed Patty Negri. If you've never heard of her, she is a famous psychic. So that's gonna
I've
come out.
heard of her. Yeah.
So that's gonna come out soon. And she talked about all these really interesting things. So that was a really fun interview. So I'm
Very
excited
cool.
I'm excited you get to be on here too.
Yeah, me
Because
too.
we're here to help people or uplift, people who do really important work that people aren't exposed to all the time.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited. Thank you again. And so
Cool.
to begin, I would like to before we start, do you have any questions?
The only question I have is I would really love to hear just a little bit about what inspired you. Like, what was the inspiration that brought you to this place of launching?
Yeah. Okay. So funny story. Actually, this was a class assignment. So I go to Cal Poly Pomona, which is in California,
Yep.
and I was taking copy editing, and our last assignment was a final project on finding your own publication, starting your own. He had different examples of what we needed to use, use specifically, review these articles for your publication. So you didn't really have much flexibility, writing your own stuff because copy editing is looking it over.
Yeah.
So I thought of Positive Vibes Magazine, and I came up with a little mission and description, and I really liked the idea. So then after I asked my friend, we weren't in the class, but I asked her, and I was like, "Do you think this is a good idea? Should we actually maybe pursue something like this?" And she thought it was a good idea, and here we are, 2-ish months later.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so it was really
So
exciting.
exciting. Yeah, that's awesome. Congratulations. That's
Thank
so
you.
good. Yeah.
Yeah, it was so
Very
glad.
fun.
Yeah, it was so exciting that it just came from a class assignment.
That's so good.
But awesome, thank you, Amy. But so to begin, for people who don't know you, I would just like to hear about you. Tell us about yourself, especially for people
Okay.
who've never heard of you before. What do you do?
Yeah, yeah. So I'm Amy White. I am an intuitive medium, a channel, an energy healer, and I like to call myself a truth bomb dropper. And I work with people one-on-one in group settings and in front of large audiences, talking about how to connect to our inner knowing and how to use that inner knowing as a way to help guide us each on our individual journeys. And so all the different types of energy work comes into play when I do this work. And it, of course, depends on the audience, but really tapping into and helping to bring forward the client's inner wisdom so they can start to trust and move through things that block their path and begin to really lead their life from a place of knowing as
Mhm.
opposed to looking outward always for someone to tell the answers or give the guidance or the experts or gurus, really bringing this empowerment to people's lives so they can start to really feel that they're really fully embodying their experience.
Awesome, great. So when you say medium, I was not aware of that term. I looked more into it. I'm like, wow, I did not know that was called that.
Yeah.
So then, what exactly is mediumship, and when did you first discover that you had the ability of being a medium?
Yeah. So mediumship is the ability to connect into the non-physical. So souls that have crossed over from being in this life experience to, passing on to the other realm, the other vibration. And it allows me to work with people to connect to loved ones that have crossed over. And often comes clarity and closure and more information that can help the people who are still here in the physical lead a better happier life because they are able to close a chapter on something that has created, an issue for them, or just to be able to connect in with a loved one for the comfort and support that gives some people. Um, I first, I've always known that I could connect in this way, but I was brought up to believe that it was not a good thing to do. And
Mhm.
so for many, many years, I shut it down.
Mm.
And about 15 or so years ago, my grandmother passed away, and we were very close. She was one of my best friends. And not long after she crossed, I started to feel her presence, and it was very natural and organic. I would be in my car driving, and I would just all of a sudden feel like she was in the car next to me. I
Mm.
could smell her perfume, and um, as she started to show up in that way, I started to dialogue with her, and because it felt so natural and so safe, it helped me to feel much more confident in the fact that I could use this tool for myself, but then for others as well. And at the same time, I was doing coaching work with life coaching, business
Mm.
coaching. And as I was working with my clients, I would realize that their loved ones would show up. So if a client was talking about how they wish that their father had seen them make it to a certain level of their business career progression, um, their father would show up, and I could sense them behind me, and
Mm.
I could tell what the father was thinking and feeling about the moment. And so while I didn't share right away with my clients that that was happening, it was really helpful for me to start to, really practice
Mm.
tuning in, connecting with, understanding who the people were. And that, again, it was a safe thing for me to be doing because I had some belief systems that were, kind of blocking me from fully embracing the gift that was there.
Wow, that's very interesting. I had a question. So when you
Yeah.
mentioned this other layer, not layer, this other realm, do you necessarily mean afterlife, or is there something else? If that makes sense.
Yeah, that's such a huge question.
Yeah.
And I think that there's lots of answers,
Mhm.
right? Because we do create our own reality. And so what feels good to us, what language feels good to us, um, is all appropriate. In the work that I do, there's sort of two realms. You've got the physical realm, which is us here in this human body, in this human experience, right? Living this life. And then there's the non physical realm, which is souls that are no longer embodied, that are still doing their soul evolution, even though they're not in a physical body. So you can, and again, you can call that lots of names, lots of terms. You could call it heaven, or whatever works for people's belief systems. I found in the work that I do that I try to make it, choose the word that feels best for you. Some people like the word God. Some people they don't. It makes them feel resistant. So it's like pick the word that works. It's all in everything that I've been shown. It's all the same. And there's, again, what I believe and what I've been shown is there's really only one place that all souls go, and
Mhm.
it's this non-physical vibration, energy vibration, that where they're not in a body per se, but they're still very much consciousness, which is how the connection becomes something that can actually happen with people.
Yeah. So then when you say that this is a place that any soul can go to, do you mean even if they're deemed unworthy or they've caused a lot of havoc in their physical form, that when they cross over, there's only one place for everyone?
There's only one place for everyone.
Mhm.
It's as far as what I've been shown, and what I believe. Mhm.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. So
Yeah.
coming to this ability and medium and like your awakening, what you've learned, how do you think that has positively changed your life?
Well, if you had asked me 10 years ago that, that I would be doing this work today in such a a public way, I would have, I would have been like, no way, no way. But it's positively changed my life in that I have learned so much about my own journey through working with my clients. But there's also a part of it that's so beautiful and such an honor and a privilege when I can help someone who's here in the physical connect with someone who's crossed over for the purpose of healing. Um, Often I do a lot of work with parents who have had a child or loved one die by suicide. And so being able to help close some of the questions that the parents have, or to bring some light to something that will help them to heal,
Mhm.
is I mean, it impacts me every single time in such positive ways. And I think it just influences me to want to do this work more, but also to show up in this world, right? In my own human
Mhm.
experience in a way that's more loving and more compassionate and more understanding, um, as well. I think it's just all that magic.
Yeah, wow. I can't imagine how like maybe not necessarily rewarding, but how overwhelming it can feel to give a family that kind of closure when, they may experience, some families who don't know about people like you will experience life forever not knowing what they did or why it happened. And
Yeah.
it's an amazing gift. And thanks for sharing and embracing it. After what you said 10 years ago, you wouldn't have ever tapped into this. So,
No, I was working in a corporate job. I was climbing the corporate ladder. Like,
mhm.
this was the furthest thing from my radar as far as what I thought I would be doing with my career path, right? Um, and yet I couldn't imagine not doing it not being in my life.
Yeah, that's like probably my other question was like, how can you imagine medium or any of this stuff not in your life? What would your life look like? Would you lose purpose or something like that?
Well, I think it's bigger than that, because one of the things that I've learned and it's been a long lesson for me
Mhm.
is to release as much as possible the things that I do as part of my identity. And so as I let go of the identities of wife, mother, daughter, not that I'm not those things, but they don't define me. I also don't look at the media, being a medium or intuitive or a healer as the thing that defines me. It's part of the bigger picture of who I am. But what it does is it allows me to align in a way with myself that I can show up authentically,
Mhm.
and I don't have to pretend to be anything, than that I'm not, to please others, or in some ways to make other people feel comfortable. Because as you can imagine, there are people who meet me and find out what I do that are very uncomfortable with that type of work. And so it's allowed me to show up in my truth, whether or not people are ready to hear it, or people are ready to accept it or believe it. And it's not my job to convince anybody of the work. So, but it also ripples out into all of the other areas of my life. And so how I show up in relationships, and how I show up in the community, and how I show up in the things that I feel passionate about, come back to that place of authenticity, being as true to myself as I can be. And I feel like it's a lifelong thing that we all are here to learn. Like, how do we come home to ourselves and really be the truest version of the soul human combination? Because we're not one or the other, we're
Right.
both. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Wow. Okay. I was one of my things I was thinking when you were talking about that was kind of like, what was I gonna go on that? Oh yeah, that it is like you can understand where people can be scared of this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And because it can be scary for some people who have never tapped into it or don't know much about it. And it's such big ideas and such things that are out of our realities. Like you said, we create our reality. And some of us, our realities, that doesn't exist or we haven't seen it yet. And I
Right.
think it's a path. I think people do find their way,
Yeah.
and maybe some don't, but after they will, though.
Right, exactly. And in full transparency, it scared me.
Hmm.
When it first started, when I first really recognized what was happening, and not with my grandmother, that was really easy. But where I started to feel as though I was being called to do this work on a broader scale,
Hmm.
it did make me a bit afraid. I was worried how people would look at me and receive me and allow me to be my own human journey, because it's not, as I said, it's not my identity. It's not the only thing that's me. um, but I was a little concerned about it, and so it took me some time to work through that fear as well, and maybe even a little bit of skepticism, like, is this really happening? Like, is this really real? And through lots of years of practice and committing to it, I've come to the place, of course, that I know it is, like, without a doubt.
Yeah. So have you gained like new relationships, good new friends through this, ability that you have? Do you attend like conventions and stuff? Do you do stuff like that?
I do. I do. Well, yeah. The answer is yes, right? We really do attract those that are most vibrationally in sync with us. And
Mhm.
so as I've shifted into more and more of this version of me for now, and then there'll be more versions down the road, people leave who no longer vibrate or resonate to the person that I am, and then people show up. Um, I do I don't know if I've done a convention, but I've definitely done workshops and events, and I've spoken at healing events and conferences and that type of thing. So yeah, yeah, and it's amazing. Even the people who I would um, not expect to embrace the work, they're usually the ones that surprise me.
Well, really.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It just, I mean, from a place of first impression, like, oh, okay, here's somebody, they're gonna really want me to prove it to them.
Mm.
And sometimes I feel that energetically too when I'm doing my work. But sometimes it's just my human mind going, uh-oh, what's coming? And then I find that they're like so open to all of it. And it's really exciting to see it, and then to learn, okay, I can drop the judgment piece of it and just let people be who they are. And the more I let people, and I say let, right, it's not really, I'm not letting them, but in my dropping the resistance, the more people are dropping their resistance to who I am. So it's this really beautiful dance.
Yeah, it's really interesting when you talk about almost like the mind manifests itself,
Yeah.
and that you may not necessarily be different, but you discovered an ability, and now you have this shift, and people are like in tune with it, and they may not know they're in tune with it, and now you gain these relationships that you wouldn't have if you didn't shift.
Yeah.
It's like weird, not weird, but it's just very interesting.
Yeah, it's really sacred. I mean, I believe everyone has the ability to connect into source energy. And in that vibrational connection, all of this is possible. And a lot of times it's our belief systems that stop us. And my own belief systems early on, as I said, really blocked me from doing it, because I had been conditioned to believe from a very young age that there was something bad or wrong with it. And I think there's lots of stories and beliefs out there that people have about it. The thing that I really love about doing this work and who I am and how I show up in the world is that I really, I'm living my life. I have a very normal life. And so when people meet me, they often say, like, wow, you don't look like a medium, and I'm not quite sure what a medium should look like, but that I think it puts them at ease too, that there isn't anything that's, I don't even know what the right word is, but I'm just a normal. If you passed me down on the street, you might not know it's the work that I do. And I think that's important, because it goes back to that authenticity conversation. This is who I am. And I don't have to put on some kind of persona to do the work that I'm doing.
Yeah, great. And we talked about medium a lot, but I wanted to ask you about Reiki. So what
Yeah.
exactly is Reiki and what is it like being a Reiki instructor?
So I am a certified Reiki master teacher, but I actually don't instruct Reiki. So just to clarify that, so Reiki is a type of energy healing that uses um, energy passing through your hands and then using that energy to help on a physical, mental, spiritual, emotional level with the client. So you can unblock stuck energy in someone's physical body. You can move vibrational energy through them. You can help them to open up their chakras, right? Their energy centers that might be not optimally functioning.
Mhm.
And so it's just one of many, many ways that you can use energy to help to um, and it's really allowing the body to accept the energy, and then the body's so smart, it knows what to do. So in Reiki and a lot of energy healing practices, i'm not I'm not using the energy for a specific purpose. I allow the energy to flow through me, just like I do with mediumship and channeling,
Mhm.
to do what it needs to do for the highest good of the client who's receiving the energy.
Wow. So then what is like the outcome? I mean, I know it's different for everyone who gets like a Reiki session, but is it like, physical health has changed, mental health? It could be a lot of things, right? So what are some things you've seen that people have shifted from Reiki?
Yeah, so all of the above, right? I've seen physical health improve. I've seen emotional health improve. I've seen, I always tell my clients the worst Reiki experience you'll have will be that you are in a state of complete relaxation when it's done, right? I mean, that's like the worst that. But often, after a session, a client will say, I feel so energized. I feel so awake and alive and alert. So they really have an immediate response to the treatment. Um, I'm trying to think of like specific examples, but I've had, again, working with parents and caregivers who've lost a loved one by suicide. I've often have gotten feedback from them that after several sessions they actually feel a lighter a lightness about them. They feel some of the sorrow is being released, some of the grief is being released, and that alone, then when people start to feel hopeful, then they're more likely to seek other types of help to overcome the grieving process, or not overcome, but to move through the healing of the grieving process.
Oh, great. So you mentioned Reiki's like energy healing. What are other like ways to energy heal that's not Reiki?
Yeah. So there's lots of different modalities. There's theta healing. There's and I'm not trained in many of these, so I don't want to speak out of turn. But there's a lot of different touch energy healing. So Reiki is just one. There's a lot of people who get direct guidance on where to place their hands for the energy to flow through them.
Mhm.
I feel like when I do intuitive work, that's a healing practice because it's helping to bring awareness to things in a client that they might not be aware, or even it's even in their radar that something might be blocking, or something might be a belief might be stuck in their system. um, but that's a big piece of it. I mean, acupuncture is really energy healing when you think about it, because it's working on the energy meridians of the body.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of different, um, for me, I also do work with crystals and earth healing, energy
Mhm.
as well. So that's something that I will work with a client and do a intuitive reading for them, and then from that reading will suggest or recommend different stones or crystals that will help support them where they are on their path at that moment. So whether it's a physical need, a spiritual need, an emotional need, um, and and I've gotten fabulous testimonials about how people, use the crystals regularly and definitely feel a difference.
Wow, it's amazing. So my next question is about your book. So
Yeah.
yeah, tell us about your book and what inspired you to write it.
hmm So the book is called Closer to Paradise. It's a mother's journey through crisis and healing. And what's really interesting, when I was sharing earlier about how I often will get clients who are connecting to children who've died by suicide, um, 10 years ago, my teenage son went through a very severe mental health crisis and attempted suicide several times. And he survived, thank goodness. I mean, for my journey. But as I was going through the process, I realized that nobody's talking about mental illness, and nobody's talking about mental illness in children, and especially parents of children. There is so much stigma. There's so much misinformation about mental health and mental illness, that I started actually writing a blog as my son was going through his crisis, because I realized, first of all, I needed to be able to talk about it, because there weren't many people, no, weren't many face-to-face people I could talk to. And then I realized that what I was going through, other people were going through. And so maybe something that I learned would help somebody else on their journey. So the blog then turned into the opportunity to write the book. And the book is a memoir of my journey through the 2 years of my son's crisis, and coming out the other side of his crisis, making the decision that I wasn't going to let the crisis define me and my life, but I was going to use it as a catalyst to thrive in my life. And I thought that was also the beauty of telling the story and saying, look, you could come out the other side of something this challenging, this traumatic, and still find a way to live a life that's exciting and joyful and hopeful. So that was really the catalyst for the book, was that experience. And even though I share a lot of my son's story, the book is really my journey, how I learned to take care of myself, how I learned to create rituals of self-care, how I learned to advocate for myself. And so while I advocated for myself, I could then advocate for my son. And I think most importantly is that it helped me to stand up and talk about really hard, uncomfortable things that I needed to be able to stand in my truth about, which was a direct learning for me to then show up in the world
Yeah.
as an intuitive, because it's in the same vein. I'm standing up, sharing my truth in ways, as we talked a few minutes ago, that can make people uncomfortable.
Wow, it's very inspiring. How the book was born, and I agree with you with when it comes to mental health and mental illness, especially with children, especially since you have that like bias of what children should be happy, children should have a certain persona,
Yeah.
and it doesn't. And I think that's kind of a sad persona, or a sad like message, because to the kids that aren't that way, they kind of internalize that.
Yeah.
It's like such a complicated mess. And
Yeah.
me and my friend, we started Active Minds on our campus, which is Active Minds is a mental health club. It was very sad that we didn't have any mental health club for a while at my
Wow.
campus. So, yeah, and so I think clubs like that are just very important. And I know a lot of people, my family, friends who have mental illnesses, and it's hard. And I know
Yeah.
I appreciate posts about mental health when it comes, like, especially inspirational posts, because we kind of post about some things, but sometimes it's not all like that. It's like sometimes there's posts about like, oh, like my anxiety is bad today.
Yeah.
It's a bit fiery, and I like the awareness, but
Yeah.
it doesn't go into the real deep on what it really means to have mental illness and how it can be hard. And sometimes
Yeah.
you may be depressed or anxious, but there's no reason why. And
Right.
and yeah, so
Yeah. It's
definitely,
big. I love that you did that too, because I think the more people that talk about it openly, the more it becomes, it normalizes it.
Yeah,
And then the more people talk about it, and the stigma is, is not as strong. I love your perspective and perception about like children going through it and how they feel. And I saw both sides of it, right? As a parent, it was really hard to be in the limelight and people judging me as a parent. What did
yeah,
I do wrong
yeah,
that my child was this way? And then I saw the other side of it where the parents in some cases were blaming the children and saying, if you were just behave, it just act the way you used to. And so, and it's both sides are challenging and difficult, and I have no judgment for either. However people are going through it, but it is really interesting that it's so multidimensional. And and when we're not talking about it in a positive way, and when we're not looking at mental health, right, mental wellness is something that's a priority for all of us. And this COVID time, is so, like, if there was a time to really talk about mental health and the positive things that we can do to take care of our mental health now, I think it's going to be really important down the road, as people are coming out of this time of anxiety and fear and uncertainty. And if you're predisposed to mental health challenges, I'm sure you're seeing it on your campus, right? This kicks things up in a big way.
yeah, and yeah, I like when you say that, like the experiences of knowing someone's mental health or you have it on your own. It's so multidimensional, like as a parent, you don't want to see that. You obviously don't want to have your child go through that. So you kind of don't know what you've done wrong. You may resort to projecting and saying they've done something wrong. It's so frustrating. And then on the other side, you have the kid who's like, I don't know what's going on at all, and I have no one else. It's like
Yeah.
so isolating, and those like inner thoughts can like even just bridge them
Make
farther
it,
apart.
yeah, completely.
Yeah,
Completely.
it's so sad. Yeah, wow.
Yeah. Tough stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, but great. I'm glad that you're interested in mental health too. Yeah, everyone we talk to knows that's a priority, and yeah, people are still, very it's stigmatized because it's not physical; it's in the mind.
Right.
You still have they call it sanism, which is someone's crazy. Air quotes. I want to make sure I say that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But yeah, so I never even heard that like sanism. I've never heard it until this professor brought it up. I'm like, what the heck is sanism? So I looked up. I'm like, oh, that's the word for like anti-mental illness. So I'm like, even stuff like that is not even on people's radar. These terms, this terminology, like
Yeah.
how people feel, and especially when it comes to like the media and mental health,
Yeah.
very badly depicted. Especially when it comes to violence, and then
Yeah.
even like even like just some shows or just some media don't really represent mental health well. Though even when it comes to like a suicide attempt in a show or even just real life,
Yeah.
after a suicide attempt happens, and you know, thankfully they are okay, it's almost like we stop talking about it.
Yeah.
And it's like, let's get you help, and then that's just a chapter that we don't want to ever explore again. No, you need to, because this could definitely happen again. And it's like we need to
Yeah.
really look at what were your experiences during those times, and what are tools and things you can use so this doesn't happen, and what can I do?
Yeah.
It's like so many things. So like
So
it's
many. Yeah. And that's why I mean, everything that you just said, times 1,000. I mean, I just so appreciate it, because that's why I wrote the book. Because I'm like, someone needs to talk about it. And if not me, who, you know? And I went through this very traumatic experience, and I thought, I can't just close the door and the chapter and be like, okay, well, that was done.
yeah,
I wanted to be able to say, hey, I went through this. This is what I learned. Here are some silver linings. Here was the real, raw, vulnerable experience I went through.
yeah,
And by the way, every one of us can come through something like that, come out the other side, and lead a life that's thriving and, like I said, joyful. And to me, that's if that's the message, is, no matter what happens in our lives, we can make the choice to use the experiences to transform who we are and what our lives look like.
yeah. I appreciate what you're saying about not closing the door, because um, people with mental illnesses can't do that.
Mm.
And I think that's something that people without mental illnesses kind of have the privilege to do, is saying, oh, my friend went through this, but let's never discuss it again. Let's move on. This is a new chapter. No, for someone that has mental illness, the chapter is the whole entire thing. The chapter
Yeah,
is the book. That's just how it is.
it is.
And
Yeah.
it's, I know some people have some pride in having mental illness. Some people don't have pride. It really is what you experience and what you want your experience to be like. But like, yeah, so I read somewhere it had to do with not being ashamed of your mental illness because it's always there. Don't treat it like it's something ugly that other people perceive it as. Kind of embrace it and live
Exactly.
with it, not against it. I thought that was really interesting when I read that. So I thought that was
Yeah.
really great.
Yeah,
But
it
yeah,
is.
so I love talking about this stuff. So I'm glad that we got to talk about this.
Me too.
Awesome. But so I was curious, do you have any advice? This is like has to do with writing, but do you have any
Yeah.
advice for aspiring authors like yourself, especially for people who don't like maybe don't have a big connection, don't know other authors just by themselves? Like, where do they start with getting
Yeah.
published? You know what I mean? Like, it could be tough.
Well, I mean, and it's such, I mean, the from the idea of a book to getting published can be a long span of
Yeah.
time, right? I think the biggest advice that I can give is that if you feel like you have a story inside you, you have a story inside you. And just write the story, no matter what it is, fiction, nonfiction, whatever the genre, write it for yourself. Write it for the joy of creating the book. Don't write it necessarily for the purpose of selling it and being a New York Times bestselling author.
Yeah.
I mean, all of those things can come, but I
Mhm.
think when you write a story from the place of your truth and your journey and your creative mind, then the people who resonate with that are going to find it. But
Yeah.
often, especially new authors try to write a story based on what they think people will buy. And while that might work in the short term, it doesn't help to satisfy that creative muse that's inside of them that has a story that wants to be told. And so tell the story for the joy of telling the story and let everything else unfold. You know, get a good editor that will help to craft the story, once you've written it. I also say don't read it until you're done writing it. Read parts of it, but really like get it all out of you, and then be very purposeful in the editing process. Um, that then helps to fill in the blanks where there might be, and it keeps the process moving forward.
Yeah, I like the idea of like, don't write just to write a book, because what's the point of that? Write with purpose. I think we even talked about that in something that, oh yeah, it was like, I'm pretty sure people have heard speak with purpose.
Yeah,
So then, of course, write with purpose and write your journey, and not just because you want to get out there. It's just because you want to share your experience. You want to help people.
right.
Having that authenticity, like you mentioned many times, is
Yeah, don't write to be the next Stephen King. Write to be the next you, and then bring that out to the world, because that is our superpower, right? There's no one else that is us. And so each of us individually bring a unique something to the world, and it doesn't have to look or smell or feel like what anyone else is doing. And I think that's where the magic is, that's where the beauty is, when we can be in a place of authenticity to say, I'm going to do this the way that feels good to me. And then and I think that's when things actually really get out into the world in ways that we can't even imagine, in the moment.
wow.
Mhm.
It's, I'm interested in, so for people that don't know about medium, Reiki, or spirituality, or any of the stuff that we've mentioned, even stuff you haven't done before, where do they start? Like, I'm just curious, like, let's say I don't know anything. Where do I start? I'm interested in like learning about something spiritual. Where do I go? Do you know what I mean? If that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. And I mean, it's the kind of there's a broad answer, but what I really love, and when there's something that I'm curious about, I think many of us do it these days, is go to YouTube. There's so much good stuff on YouTube. Put in intuition, spirituality, um, whatever the key words are that that's coming up, and then listen to the first few minutes of someone's YouTube, and really tune into how it makes you feel. If it makes you feel anxious, if it makes you feel angry, if it makes you feel confused or resisting, then that's probably not the right person to get the information from. So you kind of have to look around till you find someone whose message resonates in a way that you can hear it and start to ingest it, and then from there follow the breadcrumbs of what whatever it is you want to learn. So if you want to learn about Reiki, start to watch things about Reiki, people talking about the work that they do with Reiki. If you want to learn intuitive work or intuition practice, mindfulness practice, I mean, there's so many teachers out there. And people can say, well, why should I become a teacher, because there's so many out there. But like we just said, we're each so unique. The beauty of having so many teachers and so many people willing to show up and talk about these things is that there are people who will hear it better, easier from one teacher or speaker than another. And so,
Yeah.
you know, it's it just feels like what feels good to you is how you start down the path. And then just allow, things to lead you from one to the other and you'll land pretty quickly on a teacher or a teaching or a practice that feels really good to you, and then it's just step by step from there.
Wow, yeah, because okay, so definitely because my friend, my cousin, and my sister, they all do tarot, so I'm
Yeah.
very exposed to tarot a lot. And every time we do it, I'm always like, okay, I feel this. This is definitely interesting. But then I was telling someone, one of my friends, I was like, I'm interested in tarot, but you know what? I don't think it's right now. I said
Mhm.
I'm interested in learning it, but I think when the time comes when I really need it is when it will be there. Because
Yeah.
I don't have a reason to learn tarot right now. I don't seek gratification from it right now. I think there'll be a time where I need something like that though. So I
Yeah.
like the idea of it being a journey and what feels right. And I feels right getting read, but not me learning yet. So I think that's kind of
Complete,
interesting. It's interesting.
completely. Yeah, and that's why it's really what I said, a few minutes ago. It's a broad question, like where do you start? I mean, because it just
Yeah.
depends. If you want to learn meditation, start to research meditation. And then as you find teachers that feel good or speakers that feel good, or maybe you Google, meditation center or mindfulness centers in your area, and then visit a Buddhist, meditation, or visit, some event that's going on, whether online or someday in person again. And you'll know. I think the body is such an amazing, intelligent uh, antenna for us. If we're listening, our bodies will tell us right away, this isn't for me, this is for me. And just like the example you gave about the tarot, right? You appreciate it, you believe in it, but when you tune into to doing the training yourself, learning it yourself, there's something in your body that goes, not yet,
Yeah.
not time, but you have that openness that when it is time, you'll know. And
Yeah.
that's how really all of the spirituality practices start, is that question and then the seeking, what feels good to you.
Yeah, wow, thank you. Yeah, it affirms kind of like what I was thinking. Awesome. So then, I just had a question on what are you currently working on? Any new experiences happening for you right now?
Yeah, so I'm currently working on a new book.
Ooh.
Um, it is called The Incomprehensible Truth.
Mm.
And it's really talking about sort of being in this life, human experience, knowing that there is a greater mystery, energetic mystery out there, in here, out there, right? It's all the same. And then not seeking to conquer all of the mysteries, but using the mystery as sort of the way to help you move through your journey.
Hmm.
So it's very exciting. I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to it coming out hopefully sometime next year.
Wow, great.
Um, yeah, and then so one of the things that we haven't talked about today is that I also do work as a channel. I do channeling. And so a little bit different than mediumship, where I'm connecting to souls of people who've crossed over that were here living in the physical. When I channel, I'm connecting to an energy source or energy sort a group of energies that call themselves the greater consciousness. And the greater consciousness defines themselves as the infinite wisdom that exists within everyone. And so when I'm working with them and I'm channeling through them, very often they're tapping into the inner knowing of the client and helping to put words to their feelings, to validate things that they've already been sensing, and to help to unravel, beliefs and ideas and thoughts and stories, so that the client has a clearer path to move forward on their journey.
Oh, great. Um, yeah, no, this interview's been excellent. I've learned so much, and I hope it was a good experience for you as well.
It was great. I just love being part of what you're doing.
Yay, awesome. So then you kind of touched on the last question I was going to ask. If there's anything you wanted to bring up that we didn't talk about. So I know you brought up channeling, but is there any last, thoughts that you've had that you would like to share about anything?
I think the thing that I would want to share is that the more we can come into alignment with the understanding that each person here on this planet and beyond, has a unique individual journey that no one can really know but them. And even, like, I'll speak for my own journey. I don't even know my full journey, right? But that I know that I'm on a unique path that's going to be different from everyone around me. And when we can look at the fact that everybody is doing the best they can from the place of trying to navigate their own individual path, I think it brings about a stronger sense of compassion and understanding, and there makes us realize that we're more similar than we are not,
Yeah,
as the human race.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah, I definitely resonate with that. That no matter what we are, different identities, different everything, polar opposites, we're still very more similar than different.
We
And
are,
wish we would embrace that more.
and we're all doing the best that we can, even people who we might judge as behaving badly, or not acting in ways we would never act in. Everybody really is doing the best they can, and when we can come to that place of understanding, it just helps a little bit more ease, because we're not pushing so hard against the way everyone else is acting, or expecting everyone else around us to act a certain way so we feel okay.
Yeah, I definitely understand that. You know, it, we don't know what's going on in their life. Like, we don't know their experiences. Some things we can say, I wouldn't do that. And even when people do some like bad, nefarious things, at that
Yeah.
point it could be, okay, that's a bit questionable. But when people just go about their lives doing what they have to do, as long as they're not hurting anyone else or themselves, I really don't
Yeah.
really have any judgment or why I would care what they do when they're just trying to live their life. And maybe someone has an attitude one day, you have no idea what happened that day. Just
Yeah.
try to like be unlimitedly open to everything of what.
Yeah.
Thank you all for coming to the third podcast episode with Amy White. It was an extraordinary interview, and I had an amazing time. And I hope you all really learned something from this. And please look forward to our next episode. Thank you.